Hello, hello. Welcome back to another episode of James Talks. This is a channel where we go through a portfolio I've put together and I've been tracking through the years. I share all my secrets with you of what I'm investing in, how I'm doing, how I look at it. So you have somebody, that's sharing what they're actually doing and what they're actually feeling as they go through and invest. Follow along. This week we'll go through a portfolio update. You'll get to see what I've been doing in the last week since I last updated, and you'll also get to hear and see how everyone else's 401k, everybody's 401k. Stick around. First, before I get started, I want to tell you a story. We were taking a road trip this week and happened to be by a park, and my daughter was digging around in some sand and found, of all things, a phone buried in the sand. And she was so excited. You forget how exciting little things like that. And to be fair, it's not every day you find a phone. Like, it might be valuable. I don't think this was a super valuable phone. Somebody had taken the time to bury it for some reason. Who knows why? But to her, it was a treasure. You could see it on her face. And that's one of the things that is easy to lose sight of, but is also fun to find in kids, is that they see things through new eyes. They're excited about something. So this week, go find something that you're excited to do or that you find joy in just the action of doing it. Here's the update for this week. As you can see, we saw the end of July and the beginning of August, and that for me means time to buy more Vanguard mid-cap. This portfolio that I've put together is comprised of Vanguard mid-caps index fund and Tesla. And Tesla has seen a huge run up over the last 60, 90 days. So I'm choosing to invest only in the mid-caps right now and may change that as time goes on. For right now, though, it's very easy to just automatically invest every month into mid-cap index funds and set it and forget it. So what you're seeing now is over the last 3 months, June, July, August, investing consistently almost on the same day of the month, the same amount of $37.50. Here's another way to look at those investments. As you can see, a lot of I was investing heavily when the market was really going down back in March, and have been consistent throughout the entire year, except for that time in March. I've really invested the same amount every month and plan to continue that going forward throughout the year. Really happy with the performance of the portfolio. We're looking at about a 50% return this year based on this portfolio. So investing $50,000 and having a balance of $78,615 right now. Happy with that performance. We'll see if it can hold out for the rest of the year. A lot of that is the 300% increase that Tesla saw. So hard to replicate that, and probably some luck there to even see that kind of boost. But the big part, I think, that's important for this kind of portfolio is to keep investing. The hardest part is really setting up the pattern to automatically invest every month. And once you do that, it becomes a lot simpler, in my opinion. And this is how I like to do things, is keep things simple. Same day, every month, invest, and then don't listen to a lot of the news. Just keep investing, keep your money in the market working for you month over month. Okay, and now let's jump into something that I think everyone gets interested in from time to time. How do I compare to everyone else? So what I'm going to walk through next is the average 401k balance by age, and help put into context what I think is going on. So Fidelity has a great thing they do every quarter. They publish out the results of the millions and millions of accounts they manage. They say the average account has this, and they have broken it down by age to say, okay, millennials, Gen X, baby boomers, if you fit into roughly one of those age ranges, here's what the average person has. And I think the important thing to keep in mind here is it's the average. So it might be a millionaire has this much in it and 5 people have literally 0 or 10%, $100,000 or $10,000 in it. So it averages those out. So take this with a little bit of a grain of salt. It'd be better to have the median. The median person has this much, but these are the results that you have right now. So let's jump in. The average balance of a 401k is, as of Q1 2019, was $297,000. That's overall. That includes everyone. For millennials, it was $129,000. For Gen X, it was $268,000. So on average, the Gen Xers have more than the millennials. That's what you would expect. They've been working for longer. And then the baby boomers have $357,000, which you would expect them to have the most. They're the person getting the closest to retirement. They're going to need that money in retirement. A couple things are interesting when you look at where the balances have come over time. So millennials in 2009 had an average of 7,000 and now have an average of 129,000. So that's the biggest increase out of all of these age ranges. And I think a lot of that can be attributed to policy changes at companies. So if you were a millennial that started at a company since 2009, it's likely that they didn't start you at a 2% contribution and you had to change anything. It's more likely they started you at a high contribution and you auto increased or you automatically matched and got all of the company matching percentage over the last 10 years that the company was willing to give you. And that's why they've seen such a big growth rate. Gen Xers have been working longer and they likely had to opt in themselves to a higher savings rate. And over time, that those years really do add up. The one thing that matters the most is the time in the market. So they're actually seeing less of a percentage change than the millennials are. And that's likely just due to policy, where HR policy is like, well, if you're already working here, I'm not going to change it for you. But if you're going to start in the next month or the next year, I'm going to automatically increase your savings. And that's going to help you in the long run. So the baby boomers are even further behind, and that's because of policy. It really was a baby boomer might have transferred over from a pension plan to a 401k, and then they've had the least amount of time in the market at a high savings rate. So the 367% cumulative change probably reflects the fact that they didn't increase early the savings rate that they had in the 401k, and those early years really matter. Those, a decade of 2% savings rate really adds up over time versus a millennial who might be at an 8 or a 10 or a 12% savings rate from the very beginning. The cumulative change is drastic, and you can see it in this chart. I'll link to this in the show notes as well, but you can see here that 63% of deferral increases were due to auto increase programs in Q1. So that's a mouthful. But basically it's just saying that the reason that the average account is now saving more as a percentage, in 2010, for instance, it was 11.8, and in 2020, it's 13.5, is not because the average person has chosen to save more. It's that because of the program itself. It is automatic. The choice is made for the person, and they need to opt out of increasing their 401k savings. So this is a good policy change that I think employers have made. One last thing that I found interesting as I was researching what the average 401k balance is a good article on Financial Samurai talking about how much should one have saved by different age categories. And I'll link to that in the show notes. But I think the most important thing that I take away from this is just looking at why save, what does it matter over time. And the biggest reason just has to do with inflation. meaning how much more expensive are things in the next 10, 20, 30 years. And there's a good chart in here that really breaks down the costs and the overall inflation. So you can see a new car has not changed very much in price over the last 10 years. Clothing is actually slightly cheaper. Software is cheaper. Cell phone service is cheaper. But there are some things that are much more expensive, like food and housing. Medical care has skyrocketed. Hospitals, college has skyrocketed in price to be about 150%, 200% more expensive. So these are all things to keep in mind as you're planning 10 years out. I'm thinking, well, I'm going to have to send a few kids to college. What's that going to mean for me? And keeping some of these in perspective when trying to save. Start with why and look at, well, what is the overall inflation? If the overall inflation was negative, you would say, well, I don't need to go crazy with saving. But if the overall inflation is quite high, or is the particular categories I'm going to be in 10, 20 years for medical services is quite high, you really want to save the max. Thank you for following along this week. I hope it was helpful. And if you would, I'd appreciate if you leave a like. It helps let other people know about this program, and we'll see you next week.